of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Monday, June 13th, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFKFacts blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, the Spymaster, and Watergate. Also on the program today, Senate Gang of 20 announces an anemic gun control deal. Meanwhile, it is day 2 of the January 6th commission hearings. And in Idaho, 31 white supremacists charged with planning a riot at a Pride event. Meanwhile, Proud Boys assault a drag queen reading hour at a library and at other events, I guess, Pride events around the country. Colorado law now allows collective bargaining for county workers, though they can't yet strike. The FDA apparently paused inspections during COVID, and baby formula plants went to hell. Washington Post investigation shows Israeli soldiers very much likely the killer of an American-Palestinian journalist. French elections have their second round of voting on Sunday, as Macron's centrist party may be overtaken by the leftist Mélenchon's coalition. Is it Noops? I don't know how to say it. Noupes? I don't know.
Just do an accent.
Noupe.
Noupe.
Sarah Palin leads in a special election up in Alaska.
Good news for us.
Will advance to the final election in August, where it's a runoff by 4 of the 48 candidates who ran, I should say. And the Supreme Court begins to hand down its decisions. The major ones are coming, we are expecting, on Wednesday. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Monday at the beginning of the week, and with us, Emma Vigeland. We're getting reports of the sound fading in and out on the app, at the very least, on the audio.
Might be the filters.
I don't know about that. Noise reduction compression is too intense.
Yeah.
It's chopping up the sound.
Okay.
We will get on that. Sorry, folks. Don't know if that's happening in the context of the video as well. Are we fixed on that?
Let's try that. Maybe that was the problem. I don't know. Hopefully that, unless it's a connection issue.
We got some weird noise gate thing going on. The music cuts out when you take a breath.
Hey.
Can you start over? We missed the intro. Okay, we're going to start over the show. If no one can hear any of that, we're going to have to do it again. All right, we will be right back, folks.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder. Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, June 13th, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, again, it's Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFKFacts blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, The Spymaster, and Watergate. Meanwhile, Senate Gang of 20 announces an anemic gun control deal. It is day 2 of the January 6th commission hearings. In Idaho, 31 white supremacists charged with planning a riot at a pride event in that very same state. Meanwhile, Proud Boys assaulting drag queen reading hour at a library south of San Francisco, attacking other pride events around the country. In Colorado, new law allows collective bargaining for county workers, though they're not allowed to strike. During COVID, FDA paused inspections for almost 2 years, and baby formula plants went to hell. Washington Post investigation shows Israeli soldiers were more than likely the killers of the American-Palestinian journalist last month. French elections have their second round of voting this coming Sunday as Macron's centrist party may be overtaken by Mélenchon's leftist coalition, NUPES. Sarah Palin leads in the special election in Alaska, advances to the final election in August, runoff of 4 candidates. Supreme Court starts to drop some of its decisions today. All the major ones are coming, we believe, on Wednesday. Stay tuned. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is our second go-through on Monday. We had some audio problems just a moment before. We have resolved those. We had switched computers and blah, blah, blah. But it is Monday. Happy to be here. Thanks for starting off the week with us. And speaking of us, here is Emma Vigeland.
Hi.
There she is.
Yes.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep, that's
Emma
me.
Vigeland. Yep.
Hi.
All right. There we go.
Rangers lost the series out of the playoffs. Did you know that?
You know what? I did. And but I only knew it because I saw some guys getting punched because of it.
Oh, yes. Some guy from Staten Island completely sucker punched a Lightning fan. I respect the Lightning and also, of course, never do that over anything, especially a sports game. But like when I went to the first playoff game, and I will keep this short because it's very sad that they're out, but it was a magical run. And when I went to their first postseason game, they like started chants for like, which borough are you from? And Staten Island was definitely the loudest. And I was like, oh, this fan base is different than other fan bases in New York. Like if I go to a Knicks game, Staten Island is not going to be the #1 borough represented at MSG. So yeah, screw that guy. But anyway.
Yep. Screw that guy.
Banned for life from the stadium.
I remember taking my daughter to a Patriots-Giants game,
Yeah.
and as we were leaving, because, you know, my daughter got into it, she put, like, the black plane under her eyes. She had the Gronk shirt on, and she was very excited. And then I got yelled at by 2 women, and I think, like, in their 30s. Like, how could you bring that
It was a
kid?
preseason game.
It was a preseason game,
Yeah.
too, yeah. I mean,
It's,
so... But I used to come down as a kid to the bleachers against the Yankees, Red Sox, and that got a little heated too. But
yeah, but like the concept of a woman who is an adult yelling about your child being a fan is unhinged.
A little bit unhinged, yeah.
You just get like a glimpse into people's mob mentalities when they take those things that seriously.
Yep. Folks, as you know, I wasn't here last week. I had both. It was a little bit of a coincidence. I was scheduled to be on Wednesday, but half my tooth fell off.
Yeah.
And I had to run around and figure out a way of getting the cap back on. Apparently, you can also, which I did not know at the time, you can go to like CVS or whatever,
There's
the drugstore,
glue.
and you get glue.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that, and because I was en route to Worcester for a Worcester, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was some event where like people who grew up in Worcester or were affiliated with Worcester, maybe they went to college in Worcester, were invited back to see changes in the city. And I basically just went because I went to see a buddy of mine from high school, who is now a president of an HBCU in South Carolina. And he was at the time president of our class, and
Wow.
I was a VP. I am not a VP of any institution at this point.
I'm
but
surprised that you were able to take a back seat to him.
Get the team back together.
You know what? He's a very charismatic guy, but very interesting guy too, actually. But we got to watch the Celtics game together. But we also went around to a bunch of stuff in Worcester that was fascinating, and there is going to be something too that came out of that I think we're going to be able to talk about on this show, but we'll wait on that. But he lived in housing in Worcester that, I guess I don't remember, was 6 months ago, it was a year ago, when the question of highways as being racist came up.
yeah.
I can't remember in what context.
Pete Buttigieg brought it up, I think in
that's
the
what it was.
context of infrastructure.
Yeah, we will. His story. I mean, he sort of lived it, and he pointed out a documentary to me about it, and maybe we'll get into that. But so that's where I was on Thursday and Friday. Once the tooth thing got fixed, I had this other event that I had to go to. So there it is. All right, folks, we will get into this now. Over the weekend, Senator Murphy from Connecticut announced on Twitter that they had reached a bipartisan deal, because the most important thing in the world that we get a bipartisan deal. Now, what's the deal? Well, it's a bad deal.
It's how
It's
you
no
come to the deal. It's the friends you make along the way and the bipartisanship, not the actual substance of the legislation itself.
And here we go. Let's do this.
We reached a compromise over the weekend that will save lives. I understand that part of the news here is the breakthrough, because I think you're right. This does allow us to break this log jam, and it allows us to be set up for future success. But the content of this compromise in and of itself will save lives. The ability to help states pass red flag laws will stop thousands of suicides and homicides. The closing of the boyfriend loophole means that domestic abusers, boyfriends that beat up their girlfriends, won't be able to buy guns. The protections for 21 and under buyers, that means that there's a pause for any 18 to 20-year-old who is going into a store to try to buy an AR-15, like the Uvalde shooter, an ability for the police department to intervene. And then the mental health spending is going to be transformative in and of itself. We're talking about billions of new dollars for mental health, a lot of it going to underserved communities. That's going to save lives, too.
Are very reasonable.
All right, so that's there's the deal, and it is, it remains to be seen that it's going to do those things, frankly. If there is even a slight bit, I guess there is some value in it. Although, it is very hard to get past the idea that they're doing this to make it look like they're doing something. And let's be clear, the impediment to them doing something is the Republican Party. Period. End of story. Let's talk about the 10 people, the 10 Republicans who signed off on this. Roy Blunt of Missouri Roy Blunt of Missouri is retiring. Again, I mean, we've said this many times on this program that the only way you get to see how you get to see a Republican do anything worth anything for anyone else is if their political career is either so ironclad that they are completely safe and secure, or they have ended their political career. So Roy Blunt of Missouri, retiring. Richard Burr of North Carolina, retiring. Rob Portman of Ohio, retiring. Patrick Toomey of Pennsylvania, retiring. Tom Tillis of North Carolina, retiring. John Cornyn of Texas. Maybe he can threaten a federal judge again. Was it him who threatened the federal judge on the floor of the Senate? I don't know, about maybe 10 years ago. But he is in Texas. He's pretty locked up and safe. Susan Collins and Lindsey Graham, they got elected 2 years ago. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, same situation. It is only Mitt Romney. Although he just got reelected too, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, how brave, how courageous of Mitt Romney.
And they have signed off on something that is incredibly weak. Now, the alternative could be, let's not pursue this window dressing. Let's remind the American public that the impediment to any type of progress in the killing machines that are being sold to anybody at any time that are responsible for the deaths of 40,000 people a year in this country, the only impediments to in any way restricting the sales of these killing machines are the Republican Party. I guess people can decide which they think is more important. But if you think this is going to lead to further reform, that this is one of those things, a small crack in the dam could open up a big hole, I present to you Representative Chris Jacobs of that deep, deep, deep red state, New York, where this is what happened when he came out and even mentioned any type of gun reform.
Are very reasonable.
And the backlash against you was intense from your fellow Republicans. After that, you decided that you were not going to seek another term in Congress. What has that backlash been like?
Well, I very quickly, many of the elected officials who had endorsed me for my reelection, which I think I had a very good, solid path to victory, withdrew their endorsements. Many of the committees did so as well. And so as over the next week and a half, as things heated up on that, I just felt that it would be very divisive for the party to pursue running, and also divisive because I thought there was a high likelihood of outside groups coming in, and that this issue would be the issue of the race, and it wouldn't be a productive dialogue. It would just be running ads and kind of misinformation on issues. And I really want to be a positive force on this issue so we can get meaningful change.
So I guess the obvious question is, if you want to be a positive force on the issue and you want to get meaningful change, why not stay and fight the fight? And why not send a signal that it is worth fighting for from your perch in Congress, and not saying, well, I'm going to leave because...
Well, I'm here for 7 more months, and I think there's a lot. This week,
Yeah, I can't tell people that the Republican Party is completely bat crap crazy, because this is also how I'm going to make some money.
Oh, yeah. Got to cash in later.
I'm going to slink off, but I'm also not going to not want to get some money in my bank account. I should also say, correction, Tom Tillis not retiring. He is in the column of just got reelected.
Right.
Sorry, that was my fault.
So there will be six. He's got like 4 years before that comes around.
And so, like, let's also just be clear here too. Yeah, I think his term ends in at the end of 2026, I believe, from my quick Google search. Like, the bill is so meaningless. I mean, it would have addressed in these narrow circumstances these 2 mass shooters in Buffalo, I believe, and Uvalde, given the background checks for 18 to 21. But none of this is really enforced. Like, the red flag laws that are being proposed, more money to states to enact red flag laws, from what we understand right now, that means it's just voluntary. So most Mississippi, Tennessee, red states that already don't want to do this kind of crap, they're just going to be like, no federal mandate? Fine. We'll take your money and reallocate it elsewhere. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's an enforcement mechanism on it. And even if there is, then they just won't take the money. They won't take the money. How about these mental health services, this money that's going to go to that? We don't have universal health care in this country. Like, community centers. You think that's going to be allocated properly in a way that's going to actually combat this issue? I mean, frankly, as you say, the value in saying we're not going to push this garbage through might be better than voting for something that's not going to do anything.
We'll see. I mean, the House has a much more aggressive bill, and so we'll see if they can come to terms. But you mentioned the money for mental health. They're not even clear where they're going to find that. And much of this seems, even the background checks on under 21-year-olds, presumably between 18 and 21, is only contingent upon the background checks that exist in that state already.
Yeah.
And we don't know which state has any of those anyways.
And also, the average mass shooter is 30 years old. Like, I get like the need to like raise an age or something like that, but that's really all that's going to do is stop the spectacle of the school slaughter, and we'll get more, grocery store ones.
I am convinced a federal 60-day waiting period would probably save, I don't know how to put a number on it, but 30,000 people a year kill themselves. And gosh knows how quickly they decide they get the gun and they decide to kill themselves. I don't know what the time is.
And it's also just the manufacturing of assault weaponry, weapons of war in the United States. You have to target the selling of those kinds of weapons, or this is garbage. It's trash.
All right. We got a couple words from our sponsors today, and then we will be talking to Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFKFacts blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, The Spymaster, and Watergate. Today's program sponsored by, where is it?
Here it is.
Okay.
I can hold it up.
This really is the, Emma.
Because I had this from when you were out.
Vanna Vigland.
Established Titles is a project based on the historic Scottish custom where landowners are called lords and ladies. And sadly, we have that custom in this country, too, with the landowners. Lord, you're my landlord.
I told people on Friday, Sam, or later this week, that you make us call you Lord around the office now.
I do. Well, and sometimes I switch up because I also have my lady one, too.
Yes.
Established Titles allows you to, sometimes I do at the beginning of the week, I'm the Lord, and by end of the week, I'm a lady, and it just freaks everybody out. They're so confused.
I know.
How is that possible?
Crowder's even more afraid now.
You can't even define a lady. Established Titles allows you to ceremoniously purchase as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land in Aberdeenshire, Scotland. This is real.
It's very Scottish sounding.
So so you can call yourself a lord or lady. Put that on your resume. Trying to get into college? I'm a lord. You get an official certificate with the crest, as you can see there. Thank you. Please show that. A unique plot number, and they let you see exactly where your plot is located. You could go visit it. That would actually be a great trip. Like to bring my whole family and show them what I lord over in Scotland. And what I lady over. For each one sold, this is the best part, Established Titles plants a tree to protect the beautiful, pristine woodlands of Scotland. They also partner with organizations that are doing environmental work all over the world, like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. So this is a great gift. It's funny, and it's actually doing some good. Established Titles is fun. It's a new way to preserve the picturesque woodlands and biodiversity of Scotland, and you also support global deforestation or reforestation efforts. Makes a great last-minute gift, especially on Father's Day, which is coming up soon. Established Titles is running a big Father's Day sale right now. You can get an additional 10% off when you go to establishedtitles.com/majority. Use the code majority. That's establishedtitles.com/majority. Coupon code majority saves you an extra 10%. The link is in the description. Honestly, one of the best gifts I've gotten. The other one was semi-nude that John Benjamin had painted of himself, fit into a classic picture, but I'm not going to talk about that. Also, another sponsor of today's program, longtime sponsor of the show, Grove Collaborative. Did you know, and I didn't know this, only 9% of plastic actually gets recycled? Doesn't matter how much we put in our recycling bin.
Ugh.
It's all lies.
It is time to ditch single-use plastics for good. And in fact, by 2025, Grove is going to be 100% plastic-free. And Grove makes it super easy to do this. They have laundry care, they have hand soaps, they have more. They carry hundreds of products aimed at replacing single-use plastics across every room of your home and head-to-toe personal care routine. Grove has concentrated cleaners. They have refillable glass bottles, which are friendlier to the planet, twice as effective as the leading natural brands. Over 2 million households already rely on Grove Co. for safe formulas and refillable packaging that never compromise on performance. I am almost now fully across the board Grove glass hand pumps for hand soap. Got one for the kids that foams because they like the foaming one.
I like it too.
All right. Well, maybe we'll switch something out here in the office.
Satisfying.
And they also have all glass ones, and then they have glass with the silicone in there, which I use around with the kids. You're going to break it. And so, which they haven't, but it prevents them from doing so. And also, I use Grove cleaner. I think we got one here, actually, where it's glass bottle, silicone base, and they have orange concentrate cleaner. And it is my everyday cleaning thing. I also got from Grove their all-purpose disinfectant cleaner, which is also super effective. But I've got the everyday in the glass bottle. Check it out, folks. Grove.com/majority. You'll get a free gift set worth up to $50 with your first order. Plus, shipping is fast and free. So get started right now at grove.com/majority, grove.com/majority. All sorts of great cleaning and I guess beauty products there, and all natural stuff. It's really a one-stop shopping place. We'll put the link in the YouTube and podcast description. And lastly, our final sponsor of the day, you can get a free trial at aura.com/majority. Did you know what the fastest growing crime is in America?
Identity theft.
Yep. Well, you've heard me
I've
say
heard
this
it,
before.
yeah. Should I play dumb next time?
No.
What is it?
It's identity theft.
Okay.
You guessed it. The crime rate has been surging. It goes up. Every day I get a phishing text or email.
Oh, God.
I actually enjoy that, but a lot of times people get ripped off by it. It happens to 1 in 20 Americans, identity theft. And despite that, everybody seems to be completely blindsided by it when it happens. You get shocked, and then, you got to imagine, you log into your email, you realize that someone has changed the password. You start getting notifications, activity from your bank, your credit cards, whatever, your crypto accounts maybe. And that's when all of a sudden you start to feel a little panic. You start to feel some anxiety. You start to feel some guilt, paranoia, shock, anger. And you want to avoid all that. Never mind the massive, massive hassles that's involved in trying to deal with that after the fact. That's why I'm excited to partner with Aura. They are sponsoring this program today. Aura is identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, password management, and antivirus software, all combined into one easy-to-use app. It's basically, that Swiss cheese type of thing. You cover all your bases. Aura monitors the dark web for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers, sends you alerts fast right to your phone and email. When it comes to fraud, every second matters. You can connect your credit card and bank accounts and get notified of any changes up to 4 times faster than Aura's competitors. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online, keeps your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. Their antivirus software will block malware and viruses before they infect your devices. You can protect you and your family from America's fastest growing crime. Try Aura for free for 2 weeks. See if any of you or your family's personal information has been compromised. You put your email address in there and they'll tell you it has been, this place has been hacked in, whatever, I don't know, popsicles.com. You go there to order your popsicles and this place has been hacked. So change your email or you change your password for there. You get a list. It's really it's fascinating and disturbing, both, and helpful. Start your free trial today at aura.com/majority. All right. Want to welcome to the program. Well, we need 2 seconds. We will bring him in just a moment. Quick break, and we'll be back with Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFK's Fact Blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, The Spymaster, and Watergate. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. I want to welcome to the program Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFK's Fact Blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, The Spymaster, and Watergate. Jeff, thanks for joining us. Obviously here with Emma. This is it is a fascinating look at a part of Watergate that was never really examined. Let's back up. Please keep in mind that our audience was probably not alive during Watergate for the most part. And certainly, I don't know how many people know too much about it, but the main thread that we all, to the extent of us that we're aware of it, we heard was through the reporting of Woodward and Bernstein. And it had to do with a break-in to the DNC headquarters by a group called the Plumbers, and ostensibly Nixon was worried about re-election, and that's the part. And much of it and that was like the one strand of what was going on that got examined. Will you add to that strand if there's something you feel I left out, but then talk about the sort of the backside?
Yeah. So the narrative that we have inherited, I would say the dominant Watergate narrative, is the one you referred to, and it's embodied in the movie All the President's Men, which follows the reporting of Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein into who was this team of burglars, and it turned out they were working for the White House. And kind of the mythic narrative is, a crusading free press takes on a lawless president. And it's a very satisfying myth, especially to journalists like me, inspired lots of us to go into journalism. And I went into journalism and discovered that story is not so much wrong as pretty simplistic. And my book, Scorpion's Dance, kind of lays bare what we've learned in the half century since then, which is that the hidden hand of the CIA was much greater than Woodward and Bernstein ever knew. In fact, the word CIA only appear once in the movie, early on, when James McCord, one of the burglars, a former CIA man, tells the court where he's being arraigned for the burglary that he worked for the CIA. There's Woodward in the courtroom. He says, "Holy shit," and he runs back to the Post newsroom, and they put in a call to the CIA. The CIA responds and says, "These men are former people, and we've had no dealings with them."
Just to be clear, let me just stop you.
Sure.
4 of the 5 burglars who were caught were former CIA, CIA, right? Is that right?
Either employees or contract employees or officers or assets. Yes, 4 of the 7 had long-standing ties to the CIA. So the CIA puts out this story. We've had no dealings with these men since their retirement in 1970. And that story, as I show, was a cover story. It was completely false. They'd had repeated dealings with James McCord and Howard Hunt, the 2 leading burglars, who in fact were reporting everything that they learned as burglars back to the CIA. So that story of how the CIA was much more deeply involved than people understood at the time is kind of at the heart of my book.
Okay, so Now, what is the story that we have that the prevailing story as to how those burglars were assembled? Like, what was the chain of command as we understood it, at least at the time, before we get to the
well, what Woodward and Bernstein discovered was that the burglars were directed from the White House. That the orders for the plans, the team was assembled by the White House. But what they didn't know was that Howard Hunt, career undercover officer, leading figure in the CIA's operation to overthrow the government of Cuba, a man who planned assassination of Fidel Castro, was recommended to the White House by Richard Helms, the director of the CIA himself, a year before the burglary. So when Nixon was looking for plumbers to go after unauthorized leaks of information, he was desperately looking for somebody to do. And we now have a phone conversation where the chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, says, well, there's this guy Hunt, and Helms says he's ruthless, quiet, and careful. He's on our side. He wants to fight with us. So it was Helms's recommendation that brought Hunt into the Nixon White House. Not the only thing, but it definitely helped him.
Okay, let's go back just a moment.
Sure.
Like, why are they called plumbers? They're finding leaks, but what leaks? So Helms, who was the CIA director at the time, and we're going to get more into that because there's it's a very noteworthy and strange relationship between Nixon and Helms, based upon sort of like their personalities and their profiles. But give us some backstory as to like why the plumbers were first assembled, because they weren't assembled to go
into Watergate.
Into Watergate, and we should be clear, Watergate is a hotel too,
right?
And so just back up and give some people some of that remedial information.
Well, so during the Nixon administration, Nixon came to office when the opposition to the war in Vietnam was cresting and burgeoning, and Nixon was obsessed with spying on the anti-war movement, figuring out if they had foreign intelligence connections, and he was especially infuriated by the leak of the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times in June 1971. That's when he really went ballistic and demanded the creation of a unit that was not the FBI, which has responsibility for domestic intelligence, and not the CIA, which has responsibility for foreign intelligence, but an entity that would report to him on how these leaks were happening and to punish, to discredit, to impugn the people who were doing the leaking. And so that was when Helms recommended Hunt to the White House, and that's when they first started going after Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon analyst who had leaked the papers to White House. So that's why Hunt and his little team were called the plumbers, because they were going to fix those leaks on behalf of the White House.
All right, and so let's get into what was never. So why did things end where they ended? Like and this is the thing.
So what happened was that the Watergate investigation led to the FBI investigation led to the Senate investigation, which led to the discovery of the tapes. The discovery of the tapes led to impeachment proceedings, and Nixon was forced to resign less than 2 years later. So really, the investigation never really continued after that. The burglars went to jail and then were released from jail. Nixon was pardoned, and the whole thing was kind of dropped. And so the story of who the burglars were and what they were doing was never really reported out. And I show in the book that, Watergate was not the only burglary these guys engaged in. They had a wide variety of national security operations, especially targeting Chile. And Howard Hunt was in Miami in early 1971, long before Daniel Ellsberg became a household name, recruiting the burglars. So we have signs of these other burglaries that they participated in. There were 7 different operations against Chilean government offices in New York and Washington. Chile had a very left-wing government that the CIA and the Nixon administration were seeking to overthrow. So the burglars were really a political espionage team, sort of sponsored by the CIA or sponsored by the White House and enabled by the CIA. And so the CIA wasn't directing the operation. They were just providing a service to the White House. And that brings us to the...
Okay, well, hold on. We got to back up because there's a lot to Okay, so let's just start with there are how many hours of tapes? I just want to go through. I just want to set that table about why because this was not, I remember the Ken Starr investigation,
Right.
which was like, we have one thing over here, and we're going to spend the next 3 or 4 years going wherever anything takes us. Like, we're going to see anything here or there, and we're going to follow it and whatnot. That's not what happened with Watergate, the Watergate investigation. All that happened was there was this one strand that they followed. But was there any, I mean, I imagine there were staffers who were like, we're going to listen to all these tapes. And
well, that really didn't happen until after Nixon was gone, and the material was not available to researchers until it was put online by a professor at Texas A&M, Luke Nichter. And so there were some 4,000.
Even the investigators didn't listen to all the tapes?
No, they did not. They did not. I mean, the White House, the legal pursuit of those tapes culminated in July 1974 when the Supreme Court ordered Nixon to release 9 key tapes sought by the special prosecutors. And one of those was the so-called smoking gun tape of the conversation on June 23rd, 1972, 6 days after the break-in, in which Nixon pressures Helms to stop the FBI investigation of the burglars. And so Nixon resigns 2 weeks later, and really the whole matter kind of gets dropped there. Nixon is pardoned a month after that, and the whole thing is not pursued. And so this story wasn't really known.
The vice president, Ford didn't want to know. Nobody wanted to know. There was nobody who wanted to know anything. I mean, that's the thing, is that you need to have almost like a political vendetta with a special prosecutor to get at this stuff. And there was nobody who was like, they caught the car, and so end of the chase.
Well, one thing that is important to understand is that the Watergate scandal kind of evolved into a CIA scandal. And in 1975, with reports on abuses of power that start with Watergate but are not limited to Watergate, the CIA's mind control experiments were exposed for the first time. The CIA plots to assassinate foreign leaders, the CIA's spying on the anti-war movement, the CIA reading the mail of Americans. All of these were revealed in the aftermath of the Watergate investigation. And so the subsequent congressional investigations focused on CIA abuses of power that were not related to Watergate. And I mean, we picked up the story from there, but it was never really told at the time.
And that was that was the church, just to be clear, that's the church commission or committee, I guess.
Yes.
And they never bothered to listen to those tapes either?
It was not a focus of their inquiry. Their focus was much broader on the CIA's charter and unauthorized activities.
Things like COINTELPRO and
yes.
Okay.
But so when you say that was not a focus there, I mean, this might be not in your work. You may not be able to prove this, right? But there's certainly a chance that lack of focus or lack of, due diligence might have been purposeful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the CIA was in no hurry to investigate itself. And the Democrats on the committee, on the church committee, were at pains to maintain a bipartisan, cast to their investigation. And so they didn't want to dwell on Watergate. Also, because the other material was so shocking and new that Watergate almost paled in comparison to the plots to assassinate foreign leaders or the opening of mail or the mind control experiments.
All right, so let's talk about that. I mean, you touched on briefly what we did in Chile. This is Salvador Allende's government. This is part of, and so the White House was also. I mean, where did this fit in? Like, so the White House is looking for a squad of guys to go in and get intel in this country about the Allende government. I mean,
to do all sorts of political espionage that was not authorized under current U.S. law, and which this was the great frustration of Nixon was he couldn't get J. Edgar Hoover on board. And this is another important thing to understand. People may know J. Edgar Hoover. He was the arch reactionary, the repressive guy of the U.S. government. But in point of fact, during the Nixon administration, it was Hoover who resisted Nixon's desire to expand domestic surveillance, and it was Dick Helms who empowered him and totally supported him. So there was a continuity between Nixon's desire to authorize in law actions against the anti-war movement and his enemies, and the extracurricular activities that Dick Helms enabled him to pursue on the side. And the problem was they couldn't get the FBI to do it, so Helms offered these off-the-book CIA guys who could help the White House accomplish what they wanted.
Can I just say, when J. Edgar Hoover is the guy saying tap the brakes on your abuses, you have a problem, right? I mean,
right.
What was that? Like, I mean, was that a situation where, was that a rivalry between Helms and Hoover, or was that Hoover just saying, like, you know what? I've looked back on my career of spying on just about everybody in this country and thought, nah, maybe we shouldn't do that.
No, well, it was a little bit of both. I mean, Hoover was very hostile to the CIA. So sort of if the CIA wanted to do it, he would be inclined to say no, just to jerk their chain. But also Hoover was getting old, he was cranky, and he was sensing, the mood of the country was changing. And the types of things that Congress and the public had once accepted on the part of the FBI, Hoover was taking, lots of criticism. He was very aware of his reputation in the press. And so he was just more defensive in his old age. Whereas Dick Helms was a true believer, and he encouraged Nixon in all of these, hardline domestic surveillance policies. He wanted to spy on the anti-war movement. He wanted to empower Nixon.
All right, before we get into some of those other things he did, let's just get going back to the Church Commission, or committee, I should say. Was the church, and named after Frank Church, who was the head of the committee. Yeah. Was it, I mean, how much of it was, we're letting the air out of the tires? Like, how much of this was, we're gonna let a little air out of the tires. We're gonna have like a limited hangout type of situation. And how much of it was in earnest? They were trying to find stuff, because it seems odd that you have all of this, like this evidence in the form of all of this, of these tapes. And you're like, so I'm gonna have to listen to them. And
well, I mean, the Watergate scandal, the resignation and pardon of President Nixon forced the election of a big Democratic majority in the 74 elections. And this was a true reformist class. And they wanted to get the CIA under control. And they substantially changed the regime that governs the CIA. That Congress and subsequent Congresses created the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. They created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and the FISA courts, so that the approval of covert operations was spread more widely in Washington. It wasn't just one man. When Dick Helms was CIA director, all he had to do to get the CIA budget approved was to go to one person, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and say, sir, I want this amount of money. And that the chairman would say, you've got it. And that was the only oversight there was. So Congress wanted to get control over the CIA, but like you say, it also had the effect of protecting and legitimizing the CIA. And CIA Director William Colby, who succeeded Dick Helms, that was part of his strategy, was we're going to disclose our dirty linen in order to protect ourselves, win more credibility in Washington, and actually enhance the ability of the agency to do what it does. And so, ironically, Watergate winds up reinforcing or even strengthening the CIA in the Washington scheme of things.
Okay, so so the tapes end up getting put online, and researchers start to dig into these tapes, and our super producer Matt Leck puts them to music so that his friends listen to them as a young man. What did we find here? Like, what do we realize that Watergate, what we know as Watergate, is sort of almost just like one face of almost like a dice, right?
Yeah. Nixon created with Dick Helms's help a team that operated by their own description, halfway between the CIA and FBI, a White House team in order to carry out political espionage missions for the White House. So, you know, the all the president's men narrative of, you know, a lawless president, well, that's not really the full story. It was a lawless president abetted by a lawless CIA.
At one point, and I want to actually read this from the tapes, because this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. And this is when Nixon is advising Haldeman, who was his chief of staff at the time, how to get the CIA director to motivate him to kill the FBI probe into the break-in. Right. And this is what Nixon says, and I'm not going to do an impression. say, and this is him talking to Haldeman and advising him what to say. Say, look, the problem is this will open the whole Bay of Pigs thing. And the president, and Nixon speaking about himself, just feels that without going into the details, don't lie to them to the extent to say there is no involvement, but just say that this is a sort of comedy of errors, bizarre, without getting into it. The president believes that's going to open up the whole Bay of Pigs thing. That is a threat, isn't it? I mean, that is, he's telling them to threaten the CIA. What is the whole Bay of Pigs thing? I mean, we all know what the Bay, I hope we know what the Bay of Pigs is, but what is he talking to?
The Bay of Pigs was the failed invasion of Cuba in April 1971, where Fidel Castro smashed the CIA-trained invasion force and imposed the most humiliating defeat on the CIA in its existence. But what was Nixon referring to? Well, Haldeman wrote about this in his memoir a few years later, and he said, I believe that when Nixon used that phrase, the whole Bay of Pigs thing, that was a coded way of referring to the assassination of JFK. And in my book, in Scorpion's Dance, I show that Haldeman was right. There is a White House tape that proves exactly that. Now, let me explain the backstory, because it is a very solid piece of evidence that really confirms what Haldeman said. When Nixon came to office, Haldeman said, let's reopen the JFK investigation, because by 1969, there were lots of doubts that the official story of a lone gunman was true. And even a hardcore conservative like Bob Haldeman was saying, let's reopen the investigation. Nixon said no, but he did send his other aide, John Ehrlichman, over to CIA headquarters to meet with Helms and to get from him the CIA's secret files on the Bay of Pigs. Ehrlichman was always puzzled by this. Why was Nixon so interested in the Bay of Pigs? Cuba was not a big issue in American politics.
And I should just say, because you said 71 earlier, but Bay of Pigs was in 61. It happened shortly after Kennedy gets into office. There's been, I think, extensive writing that Kennedy was sort of bowled over. I'm not sure exactly. The institutional momentum that existed in the national security state sort of convinced him to engage in this, I think, is probably the most.
Yes, and Nixon was, I mean, Kennedy was furious with the CIA after this happened, because he felt they'd handed him a bad plan and they'd oversold it. And Kennedy mused about splitting the CIA up. Arthur Schlesinger writes a long memo to Kennedy about reorganization of the CIA. So a profound split emerges between the president and the CIA in the aftermath of the Bay of Pigs. So Ehrlichman is going over to get this stuff from Helms, and Helms, a super smooth gentleman, makes excuses, makes small talk. Ehrlichman always comes back empty-handed. This happens like 3 or 4 times. So in September 1971, Ehrlichman comes back and he tells Nixon, look, he just won't give this stuff to me. He says it's too sensitive. He's only going to share it with you personally. So Nixon calls Helms into the Oval Office in October 1971. And he says, look, Dick, I want to get down to brass tacks. And he says, as for the dirty tricks part of it, that's Nixon's phrase. As for the dirty tricks part of it, I totally approve. I approve. We overthrew him in Guatemala. I approve. We overthrew the government of Iran. I approve. That was a good plan you guys had at the Bay of Pigs. Kennedy screwed it up. What I need, he says, Dick, is, and then he uses this phrase. He says, and Helms is like, what's this about? And Nixon says, the who shot John angle.
So when referring to the Bay of Pigs as a shorthand or as a secret code to talk about this,
right?
Was that because the CIA establishment they were so disgusted by the way that JFK responded to the Bay of Pigs and was even discussing, they saw him as soft on communism, right? Even maybe before Bay of Pigs, but certainly after. Also, the fact that he was discussing maybe disbanding or altering the CIA in some way. Is there documentation about that being directly a response to JFK's response after the Bay of Pigs?
Well, I think what was going on between Nixon and Helms was that Nixon understood that the CIA was very vulnerable on the question of who killed JFK. Bobby Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson both privately thought that there was a good chance the CIA was involved in the ambush in Dallas. Former President Harry Truman definitely thought that. He called for the abolition of the CIA after Kennedy's assassination, because he thought that the assassination emanated from the CIA. So this was a notion that was not public. Nobody would dare talk about this publicly, but among men and women of power, it was well understood that the CIA was very vulnerable on Kennedy's assassination. And so Nixon's instructions to Haldeman and tell him this might blow up the whole Bay of Pigs thing, he is threatening Helms with some bad stuff might come out about you guys and the death of JFK. It was a very nasty threat. And Helms totally understood it. He blows up a very composed, disciplined man, very rare loss of composure. He is furious because he understands just how nasty a threat is. And the point is in the book, the reason to tell this story is that those kind of secrets that were not apparent at the time. Nobody in the government would talk about doubting the Warren Commission at the time, but they were definitely there, and they were part of what was motivating everybody's actions in Watergate. The politics of the assassination are right underneath the surface of the politics of Watergate.
And how did they manifest themselves? Like what? Like were there areas where the Watergate investigations wouldn't go because they're like, we don't need this, and we don't go there? I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Speak to this, because I think that there was, and I have no idea what those things were, but I suspect this dynamic that exists is one that is far more durable in our government than we know. So when, for instance, we get like a Mueller investigation, there are areas where I think Mueller did not want to go. And so, and I think it explain that dynamic.
Well, I mean, what happened in the case of Watergate in particular was Helms went along. He sent his deputy to see Patrick Gray, the acting director of the FBI, and his deputy told Gray, quote, taper off the investigation. And the CIA repeated this line for a couple of weeks. When the FBI asked for that in writing, the CIA people refused and they backed off. And Nixon and Helms stopped protecting Nixon and started just protecting himself.
And so let me ask you this: when he starts protecting himself, is that why Nixon ends up getting here's how Nixon's going to go out?
Oof.
We're going to go out. He's going to go out in these narrow parameters.
I don't know that Dick Helms had it out for Nixon. I think he shared Nixon's politics. I don't think the CIA was trying to get rid of them. I just think they protected themselves at the expense of Nixon. I don't see that the CIA was trying to get rid of Nixon through Watergate. That was not. I didn't see evidence of that. I'll put it that way.
But did they, realizing that they wanted to make sure that they were not implicated, make it, again, let the air out of the tires by making sure that he had a quicker exit than he might have had? I guess that's the way I'm asking it. I mean, it's apparent that Helms was sympathetic to Nixon, but of course, it's either you or me. And so let's throw him overboard quickly so they don't get to me.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I mean, Watergate turns into a crisis of the national security state as the scandal evolves from a political burglary at the apparent behest of the White House into this wider inquiry into abuses of CIA power. And, the CIA is getting questioned and hammered in Congress in a way that it never had been before. So in that time, the CIA's only mode is self-preservation, and that's what they were doing. In fact, after Bill Colby comes in and starts sharing information with Congress in an effort to defuse the controversy and regain credibility, President Ford thinks that he's gone too far and fires him and brings in somebody more reliable, namely former Congressman George H.W. Bush as his CIA director. So the consolidation and protection of the CIA continues right away. And even the modified limited hangout strategy of a guy like Colby is abandoned in favor of a much more hardline, we're not going to share anything with anybody, and we can do what we want.
Where else does the CIA get involved in the relationships that Nixon had, with the Joint Chiefs of Staff?
I mean, the Nixon White House was a nest of paranoia, and so it turned out that the CIA had their own lines into the Nixon White House through Howard Hunt and James McCord, both personal friends of Dick Helms. The Pentagon was doing the same thing because Nixon and Kissinger had tightly controlled U.S. foreign policy in their own hands, and they were not consulting with the Joint Chiefs around major strategic initiatives with China and the Soviet Union. And so the Joint Chiefs were spying on Nixon as well. They employed a young Navy yeoman to rifle Kissinger's desk after hours and copy all the documents and feed them back to the Pentagon just so they would know what they were doing. But you have to understand, that was a totally different independent operation from the CIA. The Joint Chiefs didn't want the CIA involved in that, and the CIA didn't know about it. At least that's what Helms says.
So is this did this stop? I mean, we're, just to be clear,
no,
it's not like we're talking about, Sam Adams and George Washington, and they would come in, rifle through Sam Adams' personal information and find out what he was planning, regards to the British or something like that. I mean, all this happened during my lifetime, and I wonder.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, you can see a repetition of it. I mean, the CIA enjoyed an extraordinary measure of impunity in its first 25 years of existence. Watergate and the Church Committee brought that impunity to an end and substituted a new regime for ostensible oversight of the CIA, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. But those committees, that oversight didn't prevent the CIA from joining with the Reagan White House and seeking to bypass Congress in the Iran-Contra affair. And it didn't stop the Bush administration from implementing a torture regime. So, the oversight system changed, but it remained very weak, and the abuses of power and the impunity did continue after Watergate. And this is really the problem with, kind of the happy myth of Watergate. Crusading free press takes on a lawless president. It's a very optimistic scenario about what happened. And in fact, it's not what happened. And, I think it made people think, especially in the press, and now why you have so much Watergate coverage is, people believed this story, and it made them think that our institutions are much stronger than they are. And now we see that they're not that strong, and that the unusual set of circumstances that led to Watergate and the subsequent investigation of the CIA are not really in very strong position to, resist the authoritarian movement that we see gathering right now.
I mean, and we should also say that, you mentioned the torture regime. Everybody involved in that torture regime is either now, served as the director of the CIA or is, feted on television. I mean, there was no accounting for that, regardless of the administration, the subsequent administrations.
Yeah, and I would say, this story about how the CIA had a much greater hand in Watergate is a cautionary tale of how the CIA's hand can be hidden in major events and completely escape any kind of accountability at all. That's what we can learn from this.
So what are the major, what were there areas that the Church Commission sort of avoided, or committee, I should say, avoided, or the Watergate investigators sort of consciously avoided? What is out there, when he's talking about dirty tricks, the hanky panky, I'm speaking about, Nixon speaking, all that stuff that he knew about. Well, first off, how did he know?
Well, Nixon had been deeply involved in Cuba policy at the end of the Eisenhower administration. Fidel Castro comes to power on January 1st, 1959, with a popular leftist government, but not communist. President Eisenhower didn't really care. Cuba was not important strategically in any way or economically. And so Eisenhower didn't really care. But Nixon, looking to run for president in 1960 and being more vehemently anti-communist, appoints himself as point man on Cuba policy in 1959 and 1960. And Nixon knows all about the assassination plots against Castro. And so he does go way back in this. He knew all about the planning for the Bay of Pigs, and so did Helms. So that was the place where the two men's paths first crossed. And, that was something that Nixon had to, keep under wraps. That was one of the things that he and Helms had to keep under wraps. The Castro assassination plots, how the Castro assassination plots related to Kennedy's assassination. This was the very volatile secret at the heart of their relationship.
I got to say, it's a very sweet relationship. They both are ideologically aligned and both willing to basically
shared values.
They have shared values, but Nixon is willing to leverage essentially Helms and blackmail Helms, essentially, and Helms is perfectly willing to throw over Nixon if it means saving his. It's a very sweet relationship between the two of them.
The two wicked Richards, two very devious, calculating men, friends and enemies at the same time.
And this plot to assassinate Castro, obviously unsuccessful, is, and I'm returning to this just because I think it's such a key point, the failure to continue to pursue that path during the Kennedy administration as Castro kind of consolidates his power and is less vulnerable. Is that the ultimate unforgivable sin for the CIA and by extension Nixon?
Well, the CIA plots to assassinate Castro continue throughout the Kennedy administration. In fact, Dick Helms is running one of them on the day Kennedy is killed. He has a man delivering a murder weapon in Paris on November 22nd, 1963. So Kennedy never cut that off, and he might not have even known about it at all. But what was unforgivable about the CIA men was that Kennedy refused to invade and overthrow Castro despite having two opportunities, first at the Bay of Pigs and second during the missile crisis. And that was really what was unforgivable, and I think what ultimately led to his assassination.
Do you think that Nixon had unique information or specific information about Kennedy's assassination?
No. I think that it's actually more perverse than that. I think he was begging Helms to tell him. The president, he says to Helms, how can it be that the president doesn't know and the director of the CIA does? Where does that leave us? He's almost plaintive. It's almost like Helms is the superior power and Nixon is the supplicant trying to figure out what happened. Tell me what happened. And he's saying, I'll lie about it. I'll cover up for you, but you got to tell me. And so the dynamic is actually the reverse of what you might think, the president facing down his spy chief. It's almost like Nixon was begging his spy chief for the story.
And so there was information that Helms had about the assassination that he felt was too sensitive to give to Nixon, or would provide Nixon with too much power over something else.
Yeah, it would have given him too much leverage. And the one thing he had to hide was the thing I just mentioned. The fact that he himself was running an assassination operation against Castro that day. That's what they hid from the Warren Commission. And that didn't come out until 3 years later, until 1975. So that was the one CIA historian called it the sore spot, the ultimate understatement. It was a very, very sore spot for Dick Helms. It was a threat to his career and his reputation, and possibly, going to prison. I mean, it was a very dangerous situation that Nixon was evoking.
Helms takes all this. I mean, is he still with us these days? I imagine he's
Dick Helms was the only CIA director ever convicted of a crime. He lied to Congress about an assassination plot, a successful assassination plot that Nixon ordered and he carried out. They assassinated the top general in Chile in 1970 in an effort to prevent the leftist president Salvador Allende from coming to president. The assassination succeeded, but they did not stop Allende from coming to power. Nixon lied about that. It was a very nasty piece of work, and the whole story never really came out. My book is the fullest account of how Helms and his henchmen pulled off that assassination. So, that was something that had to be hidden right from the start. Helms was, after his conviction, his CIA compatriots rallied. He had a small fine, a couple of $1,000s, which they paid for him. And he retired as a slightly notorious, but ultimately respectable eminence grise of Washington, advised the Reagan administration and the Clinton administration on various things. And he died in 2002.
Is there anything else that you think that we should we should know about this this relationship or what Helms was up to?
People ask me a lot about and understandably so. So what does this have to do with January 6th? So I was on with a pro-Trump radio host last night, and he was like, was the CIA behind setting up President Trump? And I said, no, there's no evidence of that. That's not the relevance of it. I think the relevance of this story is that when you have a corrupt president and a lawless agency that is working with a corrupt president, you're in a very dangerous situation. And I think that this is something that people underappreciate about our current situation. People see the CIA and the CIA former leadership as being quite hostile to Trump. And that is true. Those former heads of the CIA are very hostile to him. They regard him as a threat to the country and to their agency in particular. But rest assured, there are plenty of people in the CIA who sympathize with Donald Trump. And if Trump becomes president again and gets control of the CIA, that is a much more dangerous situation than anybody has contemplated, I think. And that's the relevance of Watergate is we see a corrupt White House and a lawless agency working hand in hand in the domestic sphere. They got caught, and both Helms and Nixon suffered the consequences. But if Trump is elected again in 2024 and gets control of the CIA, then we're going to be in a very different place.
This is about people having a lack of imagination, I guess, or frankly, a lack of just an awareness of the reality of what took place during that time.
Right, and so I mean, I didn't set out to write this book with that thing. I just knew there was a lot of new information out there. But as I reflect on what I learned in writing the book and what its relevance is now, that's something that I don't think people have thought about is that the CIA could come under Trump's control and what the implications of that would be.
Well, okay, so let me just ask one more question with that in mind. Was it just what ultimately was the brakes on that? Right? Was it just that it wasn't just that they got caught, right? Because
no, it was the Cultural Revolution. It was the Cultural Revolution that was happening in the late 1960s and 1970s and changing the deferential stance of Congress and the press. And so people were no longer willing to have confidence in these government institutions, which had proven to be deceptive around the war, around Kennedy's assassination, around Watergate. People were just fed up with being lied to. And so it was really the cultural transformation that put the check on the agency.
We don't have that now. We don't have anything like that. Like I say, John Brennan is on MSNBC. I don't know where he is. Maybe he could be on a different network by now. I don't know. But they're all, clappers on. Like all of these figures are considered statesmen, and they're still going to defend the institution, regardless of the fact that Trump could get in there. Second time around, he understands, like, hey, wait a second, there's a lot more I can get away with, and I have a lot more power. Because he started to feel those oats, like the third or fourth year that he was president. He would come in with that understanding, and God knows where he would be exponentially 3 or 4 years into it.
Yeah, no, and I think all of those guys all of those CIA formers, have not acknowledged the possibility that their underlings and former subordinates at the CIA may well go to Trump, and just decide, that's where the president goes. Dick Helms said, you go with the president or you get out of the executive branch. I mean, that is the mode at the CIA. And so this idea that because these former guys are standing up to Trump and they don't like him and they're personally offended by him, I don't think that they've really examined the institutional realities of their situation.
Yeah, unless you're JFK, or unless, and this is, I know we're taking up a lot of your time, but it's just an interesting thought experiment about, how close Bernie Sanders got in 2016, what the reaction from the CIA would have been if there was an actual democratic socialist president who was threatening to really win.
Well, I think that we would see, I think that we would see the kind of offensive that they launched against Trump. I don't think they'd have as much ammunition because Bernie's not corrupted by or wasn't seeking favors from foreign nationals. That's not his style. But I think that, you would have a lot of leaks from the intelligence community trying to discredit a Sanders presidency. That's the reality of the CIA as a power player in the constellation of Washington institutions. Too often we just think of the government as the White House. There's a whole array of different mountains if you think of the US government as a mountain range. The CIA is one peak and the White House is maybe a slightly bigger peak, but these are big mountains. They don't move, that landscape doesn't change. And that's another thing that Watergate tells us. Look at the CIA and the kind of impunity they enjoyed in 1972 and favorable press coverage, and today they have a lot of impunity and they have a lot of favorable press coverage.
Jefferson Morley, editor of the JFKFacts blog, author of Scorpion's Dance, The President, The Spymaster, and Watergate. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll put a link to that in the podcast and YouTube description.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. I'm going to head into the fun half of this program.
That will be my passive-aggressive Father's Day gift for the year.
What's that?
That book.
Oh. It's not going to be as effectively passive-aggressive if your dad's not listening today. No, he's not. Ever. Never. Good luck hanging up your flag, Dad. Read this book.
Move on.
I just like the idea that, like,
we're going to go deep into this.
While all this CIA stuff's going on, also the Joint Chiefs of Staff has their own spy just rifling.
It's unbelievable.
It's like a comedy almost. Like somebody should do like an Office-style mockumentary, but just like real stuff that happened in the 60s and 70s.
It feels like a Peter Sellers type of like comedy from like the late 60s,
Is there anybody here not
like you feel like Benny Hill music playing in the background, where the president walks out, someone from the Joint Chiefs of Staff goes in, ruffles through his desk, he comes back in.
Spies bumping into each other.
One shuts the door, the other one opens up the closet and walks out and turns on the tape.
2 kids in a trench coat.
They're all like
good stuff.
Piling up at the what do they call that thing where you develop film? The
dark room.
Spy film.
The dark room. Wow.
Dark room.
Oh God, I feel old.
Yeah.
Folks, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half. And you allow this show to survive and thrive. Members make up the overwhelming majority of our revenue. Somewhere in the high 80s to low 90s. I don't know. I make up the number every day because I don't know the percentages but it's high, super high. And you keep us afloat. If you're one of those people who can't afford a Fun Half membership, send us an email, right in the subject line, Fun Half. Wait a couple of weeks, and we will get there, and we will work something out with you. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Get 10% off. It's great coffee. They got a cold brew. You can get the MR blend. Great company. Great coffee. Check it out. What is happening in the Matt Lekian media universe?
Yeah, for Left Reckoning patrons, we did a think tank for an hour and a half. We'd take your questions and voicemails. We also talked about the Overstock CEO being lonely at lunch because he says he opened up during the pandemic. Like on Tuesdays, you can go eat lunch with the Overstock.com CEO, and only 10 employees have taken him up on that. And isn't it so bad at how people aren't willing to?
Only 10 brown-nosing losers.
Yeah, I like the idea that like Tuesdays is the day that I'll condescend to meet with you plebs and you can watch me eat. But yeah, so patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to the think tank.
Oh, incidentally, don't forget tomorrow, guys. Meet in the commissary.
Oh, right.
1 out of 4 in attendance. 2 out of 4
if we had lunch during this time block, that would be huge for me.
Eat on air.
I'm already starting to get hungry. It's an issue for me. I don't really get it. Go on.
See you in the Fun Half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
No me key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single frickin' day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start watching.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say. 857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes to satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half, wherein we take your phone calls and we read your IMs and we go through some of the crazy hijinks, hanky-panky, that has gone on in our country over the past couple of days. Matt, what is Matt? Matt's looking for.
I just lost all the videos, so I got to load those back up.
New computer troubles. That kind of interview is like, you have that on Monday, you know it's going to be a good week. That's how I feel.
Let's go to the IMs.
My positivity is not appreciated.
Let's start with the most recent one. Vermont Ben, will you be addressing the controversy currently rocking the left? How Pacman has been off for the last 4+ days for having the audacity to have a child. Ugh. He doesn't.
Yeah,
you had children first, didn't you?
Oh my God. The guy, every single thing, he rips me off. Do you know what his kid's name is? No. Mila. No. You're kidding. No, it's not. I don't think it is. I don't know. It's not.
Isn't paternity leave, isn't that for the moms? Like, that's what Joe Rogan taught me.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy. It's crazy what Pacman's doing. I've never seen anybody so desperate to be me. No, I'm very excited at the idea of Pacman having to deal with a young child. That is going to be really fun for me as I watch his set just sort of fall apart over time.
The decay of fatherhood.
Yep. Mickey 7. Oh, yeah, we got all those audio complaints. Daredevil. Sam, I'm so glad you're back. I have been burning apple question. I desperately need your expertise. Which apples are best for applesauce? I figured you would know since you're at an age at which you're transitioning away from solid foods. Dental care for all. The key is to mix. You know, it depends on what, you know, do you like your applesauce tart? Do you like it sweet? I would say as a good base for your applesauce, you can never go wrong with an Arkansas Black. It's a hearty apple. It's a keeper. I would start there and then just go with where your palate takes you.
Okay.
Audio's fading in and out. Compression. Let's see. And let's see. I've always thought you were the left-wing O'Reilly, just in terms of doggedly not putting up with BS in a debate, but you just confirmed it by uttering his old introduction. Emma Vigeland, to everybody, there she is.
What?
I don't know. I guess that's how it goes.
That's a close Bill O'Reilly watcher.
Yeah, I guess so. It's insane that the U.S. government says left Lucifer, that the U.S. government does this crap and then says, see, socialism, communism doesn't work, and people eat up that propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of Allende, of course, yes. The operative, but Worcester is weird now, huh? No, Worcester's not weird. It's just going back there was a weird experience. Like,
just spelled weird.
I was walking on a Wednesday night from Polar Park, and I heard jazz at a bar at like 10 o'clock at night. I was like, what is going on? What is
jazz?
Yeah. They tore down Sir Morgan's Cove. That should have gotten a national landmark status.
Is that a pirate-themed bar?
No. It is where the
Sounds
Rolling
fun.
Stones started their Tattoo You tour. So, yep. Apparently we don't care about our history anymore. I did learn a couple of facts about Worcester, which I'll be dropping here and there over time.
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs.
They
Judy
should have gave you the
Giuliani-
key to the city.
That's what we told everyone that was happening for you.
That was not the case. Nope, not even close. Pizza legs fixed. It sounds good now. Skippy, Granny Smith apple's the best. So tart, says Skippy. That is obnoxious and weird thing to say. Sounding good on YouTube. Noise. Okay, the theme music's the same noise gate as your mic, Sam. Also, your camera appears to be dropping frames. Working on that. Dixie Enormous. Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Sam, off topic. Can we get an LFG? Says Rob from Dedham. This show is an instant best of 2022 candidate. Can we get an LFG, preferably in a Sam fake Boston accent, for the Celtics? Must-win game tonight, almost as if Worcester is the Paris of the 20s. An LFG?
Let's fucking go.
Oh. Come on. Let's effing go. I'm not going to say.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Worcester was the Paris of the 80s. Seven Hills. Southern Socialist Sam, HBCU. I'm HBCU, Southern Carolina State. No, it's a much smaller one. Kid tested Politburo. Can't believe how dismissive you are about this bipartisan bill. All I thought about is when 19 children were killed was this could have been prevented with lower copays for mental health, telehealth calls and better access to hardened single-door community behavioral health centers. Chapped lips. Hey, Sam, do you use chapstick? I was thinking of using chapstick, but I thought it might be weird if you already did. That is a line from Bob's Burgers, the movie. Yeah, Hugo. Andrew, win Olympia. Just remember, these things happen. Nothing but patience, nothing but love. Trump farts, Gerbilfer. Is that Lord or Lady ad for real? It sounds like a bit they did on Cumtown. Stavros is apparently Lord of Small Penisshire. No, it's true. It is actually, well, I don't know about that, but I'm saying it is a real ad. Should we do this Prager one? Yeah.
I'll look for a few hearing.
Prager's been on one recently.
Here is Dennis Prager, the moral authority of America. What does he call himself? I don't know what he calls. Here is Dennis Prager taking a phone call, and I think to the extent that we saw any movement by Republicans, and there were 6 of them who are not retiring out of that 10. Now, again, this is just a deal that could very well fall apart. Let's also be clear about that. But the Democrats managed to get the worst of all worlds. The deal falls apart. The Democrats will be blamed. Somehow they will be the encumbrance to gun reform because they played this so poorly. But here is Dennis Prager. There is real pressure out there, and here's Prager.
I heard your talk on gun control.
Pause it for 1 second. To be clear, this is a caller into the Dennis Prager show.
2 questions. Do you have the guts to go down to the people in Texas whose kids were killed, the kids in the high school in Florida, and the ones that saying, and tell them to their faces that their request for gun control on certain things and everything else is wrong and that they're leftists? Have you got the guts to tell them to their faces that what they're feeling is wrong and you're right?
Of course, I would be honored to speak to them and tell them they're wrong. Honored. It would be one of the highlights of my life to talk to these grieving people and tell them that their reactions, though completely understandable, will do nothing to prevent other kids and other parents from the same suffering. It would be my honor to speak to them. Florida and Texas. That is correct.
Well, why don't you do that, Dennis? Why don't you go
Because they're not
down
going to
there?
come to my talk, okay? Let's live in reality. I hereby announce to everyone listening in Florida and Texas, it would be my honor. I would humbly go before grieving parents and tell them that the issue in America is values, not guns.
Would you call them lefties?
No. I would call the idea, if they asked me, do you think that the concentration on guns rather than evil is a left-wing idea? I would say that has been the left's view since Vladimir Lenin.
This is why, one, I like the caller, right? Trying to take it to him. But at the same time, we were speaking about this a bit last week. morally shaming these people into changing their position on this is not effective, because Steve Scalise got shot and he still has the same position that he had before on gun control. Someone wrote in and said, I can't understand why conservatives ask them if this happened to their kids, if they would change their opinion. They wouldn't. They wouldn't. I mean, maybe a regular conservative in New York, in Alabama, wherever, might do so, but Republicans feel beholden to the gun fetishization that is like inherent to their party right now, and they're just going to say doors or more guns. They're beyond moral shaming in many areas, but particularly here.
And let's be clear, this is a fundamentalist response. They need to focus on evil, not on guns. What is the policy in which you deal with evil? Like, what is the policy? What is the governmental response or the non-governmental response to evil? Do we pray for angels to come down and protect people?
More mass incarceration.
This is the merger of the Republican ideology and conservatism with Christian and Judeo-Christian, as Prager would say. We got to get the few of us in there. Fundamentalist religion it's been an ongoing project, let's be clear, for 50 years. But it is more or less complete now, where, this is the same talk of, George W. Bush. He introduced this thing. It is evil. We need to fight evil, not the mechanism, whatever that means, not the mechanism that exists in the real world as to how they do this. We need to fight evil. An idea, a cartoon, we need to fight.
What was he trying to say about Lenin at the end there?
Lenin also was just about ignored evil for the sake of guns. It's like a 3-year-old. Split the spliff. Scaredy Sam. You call everyone else out for not debating you. Oh, hold on, that's just moved. For not debating you, but you won't debate me. Because like the Three Stooges, Dave, Steve, and Jim, you will get owned, ruined, and will want to take your ball and go home. Next time, read my whole I am and not take it out of context. But then again, how would you feel good about yourself? Sincerely, Brainless.
That's a good question.
I don't know how to respond to that. You just referred to yourself as brainless.
Is that a parody of IMs that we get?
I don't know. Feel free to call in, and I mean, I can't tell if you're being real, but
sounds like an AI.
But feel free to call in and put up your area code, and we'll take you first. Yeah, we'll do that. Calling for 347 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 347. Hello, 347. Let's try. Put them back in the queue. Maybe it was them. Maybe it's us. We'll find out in just a second. Calling from a 406 area code. 406.
Hello, this is me.
Yes, it is you.
All right. Excuse me. Sorry to finally get in. I unfortunately missed the show earlier today, but
your name is,
have been hearing a lot
from.
Oh, my apologies. My name is Calvin. I'm calling from Montana.
Calvin from Montana. What's on your mind?
Yes. So I have recently heard one of the sayings that kind of puts a little bit of fear in me about politics is that Democrats are going to be slaughtered in this midterms. I see the argument. I understand why people are saying that, but I'm hoping that maybe that's just a little bit of cynicism. Maybe it's just people being a little bit fearful about our results, but do we know that for sure?
Of course we don't know for sure, but both data based on like past experiences, when you have a president of whatever party that comes in, the opposition party is going to be much more aggressive in, responding. That'll be their chance to vote against the president. It was like that against Trump in 2018. So voting patterns are not in the Democrats' favor, particularly in the House. And also just the results on the in terms of what Biden has delivered is, not probably not enough for them to retain the House. They have a chance at the Senate, given the fact that already this year, the elections were in the Democrats' favors, but that's where I think the energy needs to go if we're being realistic.
And it's also, I would also add that there, in addition to the sort of the structural cyclical nature of off-year elections, Republicans generally vote 3/4 of the Republican electorate generally votes on off-year elections. 2/3 of the Democrats generally vote on off-year elections. And like Emma says, having a president of the opposing party ends up usually losing, at least in the House. But this is not helping their case either. Here is Joe Biden just on June 10th. Just on June 10th. This is 2 days ago, 3 days ago, arguing that even though it is the Republicans who stand in the way of any type of meaningful gun reform, even though it is Republicans who stand in the way of any type of, funding for COVID, vaccinations, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on. There's still some hope that maybe the good Republicans will show up.
And folks, it's not right. It's simply not right. And I disagree. And that's look, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different deal. It really is. I've worked with a lot of honorable Republicans, very conservative Republicans over the year when I was a senator. But this is the MAGA gang. This is the MAGA crowd. I really mean it. They have a fundamentally different view of the role of government and who should pay what. And I'm going to work with anyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, to deliver real solutions for families. Look, because of the strong foundation we built.
Now, wait a second. They're the MAGA gang, but they're also going to work with them. And also, this is as good as it gets for Biden. He doesn't quite fuse the MAGA gang with the Republicans. So it's still possible that the Republican running in your district, they could be one of the good ones. He's almost there. In about 5 or 6 years, he may get there. And actually, but I got news for you. This isn't your father's Republican Party. Do we have a copy of FUBAR, which I co-wrote with Steve and Cheryl almost 20 years ago? And it was it's like literally the first page is, this is not your father's Republican Party. They are so late to this. And it's not going to work. You can't have it both ways. You can't be touting this bipartisan deal, which does nothing, and then say, but the Republican Party standing in the way. It's almost as if this is the first time they've ever been involved in this. But with all that, said, you don't know. Who knows what's going to happen in the days before an election? I mean, so people should remain engaged. And I know this audience, for the most part, is engaged. That's why they're listening to this show. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of normies, politics has just gotten too for them. And they've got to wait until there's something horrible that has already happened before they engage.
Right.
Maybe people will engage after this week of what is dropped by the Supreme Court. Maybe not. Maybe they'll wait until a federal ban on abortion. Maybe they'll wait until the FDA doesn't even have authority to inspect baby formula plants. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for people to realize that, you need to be engaged with this stuff. And, with that said, it's not like the Democrats are helping them. Yeah, don't worry. We need a strong Republican Party. Okay, I'll vote for a Republican. How can I follow how can I follow the Democratic leadership and not seriously consider voting for a Republican because they keep telling us we need a strong Republican Party. Well, okay, what am I supposed to do about that? Like, what am I as a voter supposed to do when Nancy Pelosi says we need a strong Republican Party? Well, okay, should I donate money to them? What should I do? It's just insane.
Right.
It's insane. It's insane. It's insane.
Right. Well, I mean,
Sorry,
I'm
man. I don't know
100%
why
agree.
I'm taking it out on you, but
No, I my apologies. I 100% agree with you, and I completely get it. You know, I have Greg Gianforte as my governor. I have Steve Daines as senator, and Matt Rosendale as a representative. So I definitely do not agree with 100% of what they've said and done, especially just in the last couple of years. But I still hold out hope from the results of the 2020 election. We had such a high turnout that hopefully we can keep that up, you know, and that's what it takes. And that's just what I hope to get people like me. I'm only 27, want to get people involved and want to get people voting.
I mean, it's really important they do because, and if it's only, you know, just for the Senate, to make sure that we can at least, you know, so that when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you're not dealing with a judiciary that is dominated by Donald Trump. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Appreciate the phone call.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Well, it's encouraging to hear somebody who's 27.
In Montana.
Yep.
I think the bipartisan gun thing is a sign that the Republicans aren't taking for granted that they're just going to walk away.
Yep. Jonathan Armstead, are you taking Juneteenth off next Monday or doing a pre-record? However, next Monday is also my birthday, so if you do a show, I could think of no better observance of your favorite black militant IMer who carries on the legacy of the Nation of Islam Obama. Sorry to put your tiny devil brain in the classic catch-22. Right now, our plan is to do the show and have a guest to talk about Juneteenth. We were thinking about doing that on Friday and taking Monday off. And I don't know what the best way to do that is, because on one hand, it's the first time, I think, maybe the last Juneteenth was the first federal holiday. So on one hand, want to encourage people to take work off and encourage employers to.
A lot of employers of my friends and stuff, I think they have Monday off, which is surprising, even though it's not the actual day.
Well, Monday, it's the observed day.
Yeah.
And of the federal holiday. And for the time being, we've settled on doing an interview on that day so that people know what Juneteenth is, because I don't, you know, we've done an interview about Juneteenth, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not saying that we're responsible for it becoming a federal holiday.
How about also, if Biden wants to do something immediately impactful on federal holidays, Election Day? Do it now.
Yeah. What would be the procedure to do that?
There was no procedure for this, so.
Right.
I mean.
Could you just do it?
Democrats are a little bit afraid of too many working class people voting. Too many people voting. Too much democracy for them too. I mean, I'm sure that would get actually like a lot of pushback from Republicans in the way that Juneteenth doesn't, but more reason to do it. Yeah.
Huge fight.
Wait, talking about voter suppression? You know, people not being able to access the ballot? Let's make...
I mean, yeah, I would like some concreteness. If anybody knows that if Biden could just make voting day...
It's a good question.
Because the Democrats should do that.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Let's play this. I don't know if, you know, obviously I wasn't here for the Thursdays... or Thursday night or Friday's show.
Yeah.
But I watched the hearings, and it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
What the one of the officers there, I hadn't heard this or seen this footage before. Here is what do we got? What are you putting up there?
Wrong.
Okay, here is a clip. This is from Thursday night's Jan 6th committee hearing. And you look at this footage, and there were people out there who were claiming like, oh, it was just a bunch of old people on tour, just a bunch of boomers and doing what. And I will say this, that one of the things that we talked about early on was there were people there. And now we know on some level it was the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who had met, had planned, had worked this out, who thought, I mean, the Oath Keepers had rapid response teams on the edge of the city who were going to come in after essentially, I don't know how else you describe it, like the coup. Now, they may have been deluded as to what was going to happen, but this is what they thought. There was a significant number of people, and I don't know what we know about back channel communications. But listen to this in terms of the violence. But then we will talk a little bit more about, like, you know, what the Proud Boys, what the state of the mind of the people who were in there were doing.
So I wasn't able to really see what was going on.
Pause it for 1 second. This is a Capitol Police officer talking about what happened with her. She got knocked unconscious and then ended up going back and, you know, trying to prevent people from storming into the Capitol.
Here, when I fell behind that line and I saw, I can just remember my breath catching in my throat because what I saw was just a war scene. It was something like I'd seen out of the movies. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were officers on the ground, you know, they were bleeding, they were throwing up, they were, you know, they had, I mean, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood. You know, I was catching people as they fell. It was carnage. It was chaos. I can't even describe what I saw. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer, I would find myself in the middle of a battle. You know, I'm trained to.
I mean, it was nasty, and it is quite clear that the Proud Boys thought that they were going to be, I don't know, the, you know, Revolutionary Guard, essentially.
I mean, Elijah Schaffer, the Blaze guy who was in Nancy Pelosi's office, his original tweet was like, I'm in Pelosi's office with all the revolutionaries. That was the total mindset these guys were in.
And they had been planning this for a while. I can only tell you, I don't want to go too deep into this, and this is all hearsay, but there was someone at at the Capitol who weeks before had told people, like, things are going to change. You're not going to be able to talk to me this way, anticipating that there was going to be some change. And they would, by talking to you this way, it's like, you can't say bad things about Trump. That's not going to fly at some time in the near future.
Meanwhile, like, you know, you have people calling it a dust-up at the Capitol. That was Jack Del Rio, but DeSantis is, like, going on TV and claiming protesting outside of Supreme Court Justice Houses counts as an insurrection. Right. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Two sides of the same coin.
Let's go back to the IMs, shall we? Let's see. Hold on. Serious business. Has anyone seen the new Robert Reich Substack article, Liz Cheney for President? Oh, God.
What? Why is he doing this, man?
It's just insane. Jabberwocky, new subscriber from Portland, Oregon, is September last year. I just want to say I'm appreciative of you and the content you produce. I come away from each show more informed than any other show I've listened to in the past. Because of that, I am now a daily listener. Well, you're going to get one of those.
Whoa.
Jabberwocky. Clower. Rangers will be back next year.
It's hard to say.
I mean, they'll be playing.
I mean, you just don't know. Like, that's why the season was so magical. But they do have a good future.
The next I am Sam's greased up calves. Only a Rangers fan would call a losing in a semifinal a magical run. I highly recommend the podcast Blowback, the second season of which does a 10-episode deep dive into U.S.-Cuba relations from 1959 through the late 60s. First season all about the invasion of Iraq. Third season starts next month and will focus on the Korean War.
Yes, this is a great podcast. Would you call the Bengals run to the Super Bowl, even though they didn't win, a magical run? No one expected them to be there. It's a young team, lots of talent. That was how the Rangers were perceived going into this season. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, like, I don't really want to hear too much about that. And Bradley's a Devils fan, and it converted him into actually liking the Rangers. That's how fun they were.
Yeah, because my hockey team sucks.
Look at this, like just flames shooting out of.
I'm like really, I lay in the dark like for
laser eyes.
The smoke was coming out.
I lay in the dark like for the whole night on
How
Saturday.
dare you say the Rangers season was not magical?
It was.
How dare you? Tom from Yacubia. Landlord, landlady? No. I use the more inclusive term, parasite. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Sam's so long in the tooth it fell off. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I almost made a dentures joke. I almost did, but I did not.
There you go.
I think a few people did last week.
Split the spliff. I am real. Also, I have a sense of humor. You're the one that called me brainless. I have a 707 area code, but unfortunately, you've reached your maximum number of callers. You're scared of shadowing. I'll call tomorrow. 707 area code.
Okay, we'll look out for you.
P.S. Emma, you have a chicken feather on your shoulder.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Sam, you should brush yourself out before you go to work. I don't know what this means.
Can you tell me?
I don't know what it means either.
Chicken feather.
I think this is artificial intelligence just making stuff up. To sound like
the
an
old
average
chicken feather.
Upset MR.
Chicken feathers are meaning indicate small annoyances.
Fruited dinosaur. Listen to the conservative and QAnon co-workers talk about Don't Look Up this morning. If you needed an example of how ineffective the messaging is, they likened the government in the movie covering up the meteor to the Biden administration covering up vaccines, COVID, baby formula, gas prices, etc. They earnestly think the movie had a conservative message to it.
Ooh,
what?
That's bad.
Sam's baby cows. If you play clips from the hearing, please play the sad music when they use that image of Bill Stepien. We all deserve a good cry. 2 intros for the price of 1. Do we have any, what do we have up here?
We got one about Rudy Giuliani being drunk.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is pretty good. Shocking. Shocking, I know. But apparently, as they were trying to get the president to...
It was on election night, actually.
Apparently, according to
night, he was messed up and trying to tell him to just declare victory right now.
Liz Cheney essentially was summarizing this morning and basically said that when they were deciding what to do on election night, whether to go out and say the results not decided yet or whatever, Giuliani was the one who encouraged Trump drunkenly to allegedly to just say you won.
And the point of this, though, is that there was no basis for claiming that the election was stolen. Like even there are some people out there who think that the and folks have to remember, it's been so long that it's hard for us to remember. But do you remember how many Republican politicians were out there going, you know, the electorate feels that the election was stolen. We need to address that.
Every one of them, basically.
Every one of them said that. And the fact is that even the people who supposedly thought the election was stolen did not think the election was stolen. This was always a strategy to avoid losing the election. It was not even a sincerely held belief, even by the drunkest, craziest, looniest members of the Trump universe.
Was there anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
like Mayor Giuliani.
Tell me more about that. What was your observation about his potential intoxication during that discussion about what the president should say when he's addressed the nation on election night?
And the mayor was definitely intoxicated, but I do not know his level of intoxication when he spoke with the president, for example.
Were you part of any discussions with the people I mentioned, Mr. Stepien, Mr. Meadows, or anyone else, about whether the president should make any sort of speech on election night?
Giuliani, no.
I mean, I spoke to the president. They may have been present, but President spoke to the president several times that night.
There were suggestions by, I believe it was Mayor Giuliani, to go and declare victory and say that we won it outright.
It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days. And it was far too early to be making any proclamation like that.
I remember saying that, to the best of my memory, I was saying that we should not go and declare victory until we had a better sense of the numbers.
Okay, can you be more specific about that conversation, in particular what Mayor Giuliani said, your response, and then anybody else in the room's response?
I think effectively Mayor Giuliani was saying, we won it, they're stealing it from us, where'd all the votes come from? We need to go say that we won. And essentially that anyone who didn't agree with that position was being weak.
So what that's supposed to lay out there was that there was no basis for Giuliani to say that, even in being the most sympathetic, even the people who are most sympathetic. Now, Stepien, he's the guy who moved over from, oh no, he's not the guy who moved over from Fox, right? Stepien was the guy, did he come from, he came from New Jersey.
Yeah, he was working with Christie.
Yeah, he was working with Christie when Christie shut down the bridge. And Stepien was saying there was no basis to declare anything at that point. That is, of course, the most sympathetic view towards Giuliani, as opposed to it is over. And Giuliani was still like, don't be weak.
Yeah,
we won.
Weak is, I think, a key word there,
Yeah.
because if you could say like mathematically illiterate,
Right,
but
exactly.
you say weak, it's like, where am I failing here?
Exactly.
And it's like, it's also,
You have to be strong enough
yeah.
to add votes.
Yeah, maybe manly enough.
It is interesting how, and super clear that, or I should say this, it's helpful for the voters to understand that everybody, except for like a inebriated Giuliani maybe at the time, or he chose to forget it, understood that in this election, because it was a pandemic, because of the circumstances, it was going to take a long time to count the votes. But like, you hear Trump's voice, or what we heard from him, from allegedly what Giuliani said to him, which is where are all these votes coming from, etc. Because it was just a visceral response, as opposed to like that came into conflict with the broad understanding of how the election was going to play out, which everyone understood until Trump manipulated people into not thinking that way.
What should we do next?
Yeah, and what was the other
Which
thing?
one is that? Is that 10? Yeah, okay.
Also, this Idaho Pride thing.
I said,
later.
All right, let's play this clip from Howard Schultz. We just got an IM. Why won't you let your team unionize? And the reason why I won't is because of what happened during the Holocaust. And I learned that from Howard Schultz. I sat around with the team here,
Yeah.
and I just said, guys, remember the spirit of the Holocaust.
And none of us are Jewish, so we just like can't respond to that, right?
Exactly.
It's just, I mean, we're trying to be
Right.
good people.
Share your blankets.
Yeah,
Share your blankets.
Share your blankets. If you try and unionize, it's really more or less anti-Semitic. And so that's the message I want to get across to the crew here at the Majority Report.
It's a hate crime to unionize.
I don't know exactly where we are with the Starbucks unionizing. I know, like Ann Arbor, Michigan, I think 5 of the 6 Starbucks unionized last week.
It's hard to keep up because the victories have been like historic in terms of how they've been rolling in.
There was one, I think, in Tennessee last week as well in terms of Starbucks. So Howard Schultz, they have actually found that like wherever Howard Schultz goes to speak, it increases the probability that the place will unionize. But here he is on with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Andrew Ross Sorkin, I want to remind you, during Occupy, got phone calls from CEOs saying, should I be worried? And he went down there to check out the scene to report back to them. He's a reporter, incidentally, so that's why he did that. Go.
I've said publicly, I'm not anti-union, but the history of unions, and we have to talk about this. The history of unions is based on the fact that companies in the 40s, 50s, and 60s abused their people. We're not in the coal mining business. We're not abusing our people. But
pause it for 1 second. So just to be clear, it's impossible to abuse your people unless you're in the coal mining business. And understand also the implication of this. I'm not anti-union, but there's no point for unions now, is what he's saying. But he's also saying that my workers are so stupid that they think that they need a union and they just don't get it.
Yeah, why are they acting like coal miners? What silly ideas have gotten in their heads?
Yeah, exactly. And one has to wonder, like, what it is in society that is driving these people to want a union. Something's messed up. This is not like the Holocaust.
we're not abusing our people. But the sweeping issue in the country is that that businesses are not doing enough, and the business is the enemy. And so our vision for our people and our company is we have a different vision. We don't believe that a third party should lead our people. And so we are in a battle for the hearts and minds of our people. And we are going to be successful because the issue is what's true. What's the truth? Now, building a great, enduring company is about one thing, the currency of trust. Can you build trust with your people? Can you build trust with your customers?
Now, you do use the... I'll tell you what's not true. What he just said about the third party coming in.
Well, I mean, there's that. Like, can I just jump on that? Like,
yeah,
he brings up the third party talking point, which everyone's over. But like, presumably, it was quote unquote a third party when it was looking out for the miners. That you say like, oh, I agree with unions when miners need it. But like, well, if it's a third party, it's a third party.
Well, it's just like it's just this old, retreaded talking point that there's some nefarious, infiltration going on, and that people within his company are being manipulated, and like that's all he needs to say to that crowd that's watching at the New York Times Aaron Ross Sorkin Howard Schultz talk. Third party, yeah, of course these plebeians are being manipulated into thinking that they don't have it very good here at Starbucks. And it's like, it reminds me of the argument that or sometimes when conservatives will be like, well, we don't have hunger in this country, like everybody's fat, everybody has access to fast food, you can eat wherever you want, 99-cent burger, like as they use like straw man or outdated standards of poverty or harm or hurt in society as a way to deflect from the ways that they are in 2022 doing that copy paste same thing in this context.
And to be clear, the third party talking point is a staple of union busting firms. This is if there's 10 commandments, this is the 10 commandments. Apparently, out of 167 Starbucks that have voted so far, 146 have been deluded enough to think that they are coal mine workers.
Look at all these people confused that they think they're coal mine workers.
There are 120 current keep this map up there. There's 120 currently filed to vote. This is via a more perfect union. Now, what is fascinating about this third party that is going around and unionizing, they are doing this in the most haphazard way. Like, talk about not marshaling your resources properly. This third party seems to be organizing people from Florida to almost
to Minnesota.
No, like what is up in the corner there? Like, what's the most northern? It's to like near Surrey, Bellingham. From New York to to San Diego and I mean, they're all over the place. This mysterious third party is so inept at their, they go almost all the way up to, they're up like in, it looks like in Burlington or near Montreal, Plattsburgh, New York.
They're
all the way down.
everywhere and nowhere.
But the thing is, this third party is so inept in their planning that they have like, look at what they're doing with their supply lines. They're so spread out. It is not a third party. It is an idea that these people working at Starbucks deserve to be treated with more respect. And what is really impressive is how deeply Howard Schultz does not understand this. The level of condescension that comes from him, he is so cartoonishly out of touch. Again, I keep referencing the Holocaust because one of his early speeches to a Starbucks that was contemplating unionizing was to give them a story from the Holocaust. I'm going to assume it's true. About sharing blankets. I think it was in the Warsaw Ghetto, or maybe it was in one of the camps.
En route to one of the camps.
And the argument is not that you guys need to take care of each other, which is what a union is. The argument is that it is not in keeping with the spirit of sharing for you guys to form a bond with each other. You're interfering. He says, like, this is interesting too. Think about this, the concept of a third party. What's the third party here? Like, what's the first two parties? We have the boss, because there's only one boss at Starbucks, right? I mean, there's a boss at the head of the company, the CEO, and there's a boss in the Starbucks itself. And then the workers, there are no individual workers there. They have been deemed workers, but when they try and say, we're going to collectively bargain, it's a problem. Because this is like the sort of sleight of hand. To the extent that there are two parties, one is collectively bargaining. Management is collectively bargaining. Yeah. They share their information. They are all in the same boat. Maybe there's one person making the determination, but the rest of the management completely lines up behind them. But there is none of that cohesiveness amongst the workers, and they don't want that cohesiveness. So they pretend they're a second party, but they're not a second party. They become a second party by actually committing to each other through a union.
It's like the members say. I mean, it's like the members saying to the people in the corporation, "Well, Starbucks is a third party from you guys."
Well, H&R is a third party,
right? Exactly.
The company's a third party. The company, you're not the company.
Right.
The company's a third party.
Yeah, come on, Jane. Listen, don't do what those guys over there tell you. Don't let them influence your decision. I deserve a raise, or frankly, I need to get better working hours, or whatever it is. You never hear that. Understand, a union is a relationship. It is not a party. It is a relationship that the workers form with each other.
This is an article from Nick Boland, Pure Propaganda Inside Starbucks Anti-Union Tactics. This is ahead of the successful unionization in Denver. But they talk about there's a box of food that is supposed to go to a food pantry, but regularly workers will take out of it because they're not getting enough. And several Starbucks employees interviewed for this story described regularly being behind on rent. The idea that these people aren't abused, particularly like having to work during a pandemic, see all the different things that are going wrong in society with regards to like mental health and be on the front lines of that stuff. They're being abused, and that they're standing up for themselves.
It only counts if you're getting the black lung.
If you're a Zoolander.
Yeah.
Before we get to this, I want to get to clip number 9. This is, you've heard a lot about folks having concern for children, for young girls who are feeling peer pressure to become boys, apparently. There's a lot of people who are very, very concerned about the integrity of things like high school sports, field hockey, the idea of trans boys joining a field hockey team, or I should say
The other way around,
trans
yeah.
women.
Yeah, girl.
For whatever reason, we don't worry about the boys' games.
It's odd.
But there's worried about trans girls joining the girls' field hockey games, and then maybe we won't know who's genuinely the championship of, let's say, the Idaho South Regional Idaho Field Hockey Championship. And here are some folks who came out to basically fight against what we see happening in this country, where we don't know who the sports, what's happening with high school sports. And there were 31 of them, and they got into a van, or actually the back of a U-Haul truck, and drove to a gay pride event in Idaho.
For kids, right? Because this is all about protecting the children.
To protect the children from the groomers. And
right.
I think they all had weapons. Here they are. They're members of the group Patriot Front. Here is a clip of them being arrested by police, fortunately.
These guys stopped a U-Haul full of dudes, masked up.
You know why you're on me?
See the news.
Yeah, these are real patriots out there, really fighting on the good fight against the grooming and the integrity in field hockey contests. And anybody who's been promoting and pushing this should feel proud. Because let's be clear, there is no reason for these guys, this Patriot Front, to pick this year to go and interfere with a gay pride event, as opposed to like 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And we see the Proud Boys going out there and doing this. All these right-wing militias are doing this. Now, I wonder why it's happening now. I wonder if it has anything to do with the relentless talking points that we hear from right-wing media, and even so-called not right-wing people who are just being intellectually honest and protecting the kids.
They're brave enough to stand up to the left-wing mob that says that we have to accept people,
Yeah, we
right?
can't debate things.
Yeah. I mean, they're so brave, right? Not the gay and the trans people who have to face the vitriol, the brunt of it all the time. Not the gay and the trans kids who now have to live their lives in fear and are experiencing mass harassment and suicidal thoughts because the nation is being made so hostile to them at every turn. And the left is just overreacting about these intellectually honest debates being had between public intellectuals. Patriot Front is a group, according to the ADL, that was a split from Vanguard America, founded by a guy named Rousseau, who is, something like began his takeover of the group servers and its bloodandsoil.org website. So this is an explicitly white nationalist, white supremacist organization. And one takeaway I have from it, too, is that, one, thankfully, there was a tip that spoke to law enforcement and said, we saw a bunch of these guys going back into the back of a U-Haul, and looks like they're going to beat a bunch of people up at the Pride event. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But, like, how white supremacists and hate groups, it's all overlapping their hatred. I'm sure they have some justification for how, we need to beat up trans people because if they're white, they're not providing for our race or some garbage like that. But, what all hatred feeds itself and feeds each other. And so they're for the white race, but they're also against anybody that's different. That's kind of the gist.
Yeah, it's also hard to see, when people they get dissatisfied with their white supremacist group,
Yeah.
and they feel like their needs are not being met, and they start their own. You hate to see that kind of.
I do love the
distinction.
narcissism of the distinction between these far right groups.
The nuance mongers who aren't right wing but just want to be really intellectually honest. They don't spend a lot of time in Idaho, and see what gay community in Idaho has to put up with. My observation is that they're typically on the coasts.
Coastal elites.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 440 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. If it's me, this is JB from Cleveland.
JB from Cleveland. What's on your mind?
Oh, nothing much. Actually, it's apropos that my following was... I'm sorry?
Oh, well, thanks for calling. I'm glad to hear there's nothing you want to talk about.
No, sorry about that. Slip of cadence, but going off of the last clip that you guys discussed, so I am non-binary, my partner is trans, and we, we're very aware of how everything goes on, on high alert, and, the signaling of the bills related to, trans people in sports. Obviously, there's the egregious one here in Ohio, which by all metrics only applies to one athlete.
Right.
And
well, let me just correct that. The catalyst was one athlete. But it is going to allow, let's be clear, in Ohio, it's going to allow anybody, maybe the opposing team, to require girls on these teams to prove that they are girls, and the proof can only come in the form of an internal and external, what do you call it?
Genital inspection.
Inspection. And so let's be clear, it was incentivized by the existence of one trans athlete, but will implicate all the girls, depending on, what the opposing team wants to do. But go ahead.
No, that's totally correct. I was just going to be leading it into the fact that behind all this is the language and sentiment of needing to police the bodies of other people, most notably in people that do not conform to a very cisgender heterosexual image.
Right.
And it signals to the people that, have this theocratic belief that, everyone needs to be in service of breeding everybody and all that, that by any means necessary, that will needs to be enforced. That's kind of, the fear that, we're all dealing with out here.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough time.
Yeah, it's just...
I'm sorry, that you're, this is the reality of this era right now. And hopefully it'll get better, but I'm afraid it's going to get a little worse.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's, I'm, not on my job, but, I'm always, on edge, keeping ears out. And, whenever it comes up as a subject at my work, I work as a landscaper at the moment while I'm going to school. But yeah, it's, it gets concerning.
Yeah.
But, hopefully, I go through my schooling, go through and I'm able to help make it better somehow.
All right. Well, hang in there. I appreciate the call.
Thank you. And I just want to add one last thing to, a little bit lighter note.
Yep.
The 2015 U.S. transgender survey that has been the source of a lot of accurate information regarding the trans experience in the United States. They are revamping that in 2022. So there's going to be a new set of data. They are looking for trans individuals, even non-binary individuals, 16 and up, in order to be a pool of research data. And then that's hopefully going to be shed some more accurate light onto what the current outlook is to help make better policy.
Where is that survey? And if there's people listening who want to participate.
If I remember the website correctly, it is through the U.S. Transgender Equality website. I believe it's usts.org. The key project manager is Josie Caballero. So she would be the person to talk to about that. I wish I had the information in front of me.
Okay. Well, if you get it, send us an email at majorityreports@gmail.com.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Appreciate the call.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
All right. So we'll do a couple IMs. We got to get out of here. Folks, I'm sorry. That ends the phone call portion of our program. And now we will wrap up with the IM portion of our program. We'll do, oh my gosh, we'll do like 10 more. Miguel, I went to the Orioles game with my dad, my New York dad, when I was 13, wearing a Cal Ripken jersey, and a Yankees fan called me and my dad the F word. I think that was around the time I stopped following sports. Yeah.
I'll never forget. I went to like the U.S. Open up in Arthur Ashe to see tennis once with my dad, and these two guys, like there wasn't assigned seating, so you had to get there early to save your seats. And these two guys came when my sister and I were in the bathroom and stole our seats and sat next to my dad and wouldn't get up.
Oh, geez.
And we came back. I was like 11. So my sister was 8. We came back and started crying and pleading with him, the men, and they wouldn't get up.
Why didn't you get an usher?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did, yeah. But it was just, it ended up, I just like couldn't believe that, right? Like, imagine.
Dude, you're 11. You're not going to care about the game. Come on.
You're not that guy.
Get out of here.
You're not that guy.
Get out of here.
People turn into animals, and yeah, it really is nuts.
Max, I think this is my first IM? Question mark. Okay. I don't know. If you tell me it is, I will believe you. Happy to be an MR member. Love what you all do. I'm a recent Boston transplant and just started work in Concord. Just sending this to extend an apology to all commuters for only driving 15 over on 2 this morning. I have learned my lesson and it won't happen again. Left is best. I think this is my first IM. Okay. All right. Pro-gun fundy Christians are no different than ISIS on the political spectrum. Changed my mind. They're getting there. Gravy. If I were the CIA and I wanted to start a movement to discredit conspiracy thought, it would look exactly like QAnon. Yes, indeed. Dave from Jamaica. I'd like to thank Matt Leck for changing my mind on the JFK assassination. Before I used I used to think they're not competent to pull it off. Now it seems they are too dysfunctional and petty not to try and kill him.
That's funny.
Vermont Ben. Will you be addressing the Pacman? Oh, I already did that one. Big news from Vermont. USDA is reporting that maple syrup production in 2022 is up by 800,000 gallons from 2021. Holy cow. That's great. It's good news. Jen, question. Does anyone on MR have photographic memory?
No.
No.
I will, when I read a book, I can remember where on the page something is written.
I have a good memory. I just don't know if it's photographic.
It's weird.
That seems kind of
like if I read something and it's on, I can't remember what page it is, but I can tell you that it's in the
like which section,
right-hand corner of, and where it like I can see it.
You could visualize its placement.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about it.
I think I've ruined my brain cells with pot in college.
But I also can't remember the name of someone I met.
Yes.
A day before.
I was about to say, you definitely do not have a photographic
and
memory.
I can't even remember like what I did yesterday. Like right now, if I was quizzed, like where were you yesterday at this time?
But you can remember an interview from 7 years ago.
If it sticks out for me, but I can't remember the names of people, but I can remember
Or Michael Showalter's most recent project.
Yeah, well, I never knew that though. So, Tony from Texas, Sam, you are correct. What about? Who cares? I just wanted my I am read. Thanks to the whole MR crew for the work you do. People don't understand. I don't, particularly at this zone, I don't preview any IM.
Yes. That's why we sometimes get stuck in pickles reading rude IMs, because we start reading.
Right.
If we were to clear them first, it would take forever. There'd be long pauses in between.
That's what it's fun for me. Ad hominem. See, you get a little nervous when you see something like that. My biggest failing as an anti-capitalist is holding a strong loyalty toward the Polar Seltzer brand. Please don't tell anybody. Okay, that's a Worcester IMer.
Okay.
Or it's a Worcester themed. The name of the park there is Polar Park. And it's the
Polar Seltzer.
Polar Seltzer.
I learned that from you.
Yep. Yeah. Very exciting stuff. I got to say, the park, so mixed feelings because it's done with tax dollars. But the park looks great. Designed by the same person who did Camden Yards. The most expensive ticket is $42.
That's a nice park for a minor league.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. It's $9, and you can check the park out and sit almost like in center field when there's not a game. You can check it out anytime. And you can also, for $9, you can walk the entire circle of the park. And I want to look into the data on like a city of that size, like the economic development that it creates for the city. It was interesting. I saw panels though with developers who were just private, and that me and my buddy were like, what? Excuse me? Like at one point, one of the guys says, look, there's three partners in doing development. There's city, there's philanthropy, and there's business. And business is the only one that's available for growth. And I was just like, I also have another idea. How about we tax the philanthropists and we give the money to the government, and then we can do the growth and make it more democratic in terms of who, what the agenda is.
Right.
But they also then had a panel by community developers, and that was fascinating in terms of the way they go in, because there's parts of Worcester they really need to be developed. And this community development, CDC, I guess the Community Development Corporation, they go in and they end up getting financing and help residents of like 3 decas buy the 3-decker and help them with the financing and getting it. And then there was a private developer who comes in who works in tandem with the CDC and then targets their development in these neighborhoods so that they don't have to be gentrified, but they can be, sort of like elevated. It was sort of fascinating. It was fascinating. Jeremy F. Can confirm. What's that? Is this number 10? Jeremy F. Can confirm the Lords and Ladies thing is real and a great Father's Day gift. My dad has always been convinced he was part of the British royal family. Somehow switched at birth, don't ask, and he was thrilled to receive it. His wife says, by turning him into a lord, I've created a monster, but it's not my problem. All right, final one. We did it. We're going to do 11. Steely Danarchy. You are the final IM of the day. You guys are being too hard on Howard Schultz. Through Starbucks, he ended racism.
Good point.
Yep. Don't be paralyzed by a failure to imagine a world of different possibilities. I can't even remember what it is.
Failure to imagine. Damn it. Come on, Matt.
And maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility.
Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the mental option where you don't get paid for the rope that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I